So a lot of times companies will buy software for pain points they have today, but they don't think about in the future what those future pain points might be. So then they outgrow that platform sometimes very quickly. And Ray, you and I both know that moving from one CRM could be a real pain in the butt.
Welcome to the Marketing Expedition Podcast, an auditory journey through the latest in marketing, branding, and advertising. Now, here's your Marketing Expedition guide, Ray Allen.
On this week's episode of the Marketing Expedition Podcast, I get to speak with Jason Kramer, and he founded Cultivize, a CRM consulting firm specializing in lead nurturing strategies and technology. With 15 years of experience, or 16 actually, of experience running a creative agency, Jason identified revenue gaps in marketing and sales funnels for distributors, service providers, marketing agencies, and manufacturers. And he launched Cultivize to provide customized CRM solutions and empower businesses to improve productivity, amplify lead conversions, and provide detailed insights on customer journeys from the top of the funnel to the sale. When not strategizing in CRM, he enjoys family time with his wife, 2 kids, 2 dogs in their lovely New York home. And when it's warm, he's cruising on the Hudson River. So we get to learn all about all of the CRM kind of email strategies and things that he gets to tell us all about. But first, it's time for your Marketing Essentials moment, the basics that you need to help you continue to build your brand and your bottom line. Today's topic on this multi-part series, we've been discussing about advertising and the benefits of advertising, how to get the right message in front of the right people at the right time. Today, we're going to discuss budgeting. People always ask me all the time, Ray, how much should I be spending on my marketing budget? And how much should I be breaking it out for advertising and producing the creative and all of the things? So I am going to uncover that question for you to a degree, right? It does depend on the industry, what it is that you're wanting to accomplish, if you're a startup, if you are an established company or not, if you are a service business, if you're a nonprofit, if you are a business to business or business to consumer. There's a lot of variables that can be uncovered. So I'm going to do my best to be somewhat broad in how I address how much budget I recommend to my clients to spend. And of course, if you want more information or you want some input from just my, 2 decades of experience and understanding how to budget, I am happy to share more one-on-one with you. You can sign up for consulting with me anytime. Go to peppershock.com/book-Ray, RHEA, and we can have a conversation about your specific marketing budget or plan. But let's get into sort of some basic understanding and things that you need to know when it comes to considering your advertising budget as a part of your whole marketing communication method or plan or strategy or whatever you decide to call it. Everyone has something completely different that they call their plan. So really kind of understanding how you're going to balance the cost of advertising for both producing the ads or the creative pieces and then buying the placement, right? And then of course the reporting and everything that comes after that as well as part of your total budget. And thinking about all of the things that we talked about with selection and the different types of media that you might use and how many different platforms you might be using. All of these things are going to impact the budget and how you're going to target your ideal customer. And we know that mass audience is generally a lot more expensive than advertising to very targeted or specific or local or niche audiences, right? Or niche audiences. So it's really important to understand all of the considerations and contribution that your advertising will make to the whole piece of the pie, right? And although that really, think about advertising is probably one of the most expensive parts of your entire plan and mix of what you're going to be doing. So let's take this as a holistic approach in how you are going to measure and treasure and understand what's working in the contributions that you're making in reach and effectiveness and frequency and consistency and continuation of what you're going to be doing on an ongoing basis. So we look at your entire marketing plan to begin with, and we sit down and work with our clients. We have a spreadsheet that we've developed over the years that have had lots of influence from HubSpot and just other marketing tools and technologies and experiences that we've been building over all of this time, and how to produce the most cost-effective reaching audiences that you can do for your target segment. So let's just from a holistic standpoint understand how to calculate your overall marketing budget, and then how to piece out what you're going to spend on different elements of that budget, right? So first of all, just thinking about all of the expenses that you incorporate, especially if you're an established company, or do some pro forma estimating if you are a new startup or a company that's just barely gotten, their fingers wet in advertising, right? So, or their feet wet in advertising. So when we work with, and I'm going to kind of go backwards on this, when we work with established companies, we take a look at a period in time. Sometimes it's a year. How much did you spend over the last course of the year? How many new clients did you receive? What was the revenue that you received with those new clients? And then understand the cost of acquiring those customers. So customer acquisition cost, and then the lifetime value of your customer. And this works for nonprofits too, because you have donors, right? And how you did what you did to acquire the donors, and then how much did they give? So it does work in multiple different industries to think about customer acquisition cost and the lifetime value. And we come up with a ratio that then explains to us how much we have spent already based on historical data. And again, if you are new, you could do some primary and secondary research into what your competitors are doing, or if you're a part of a trade association or, industry organization that might be able to give you some insight, or you join a peer group of other individuals who are like you, but maybe not in your own backyard or that are not competing with you directly. And you ask a lot of questions to understand, what are other people spending on their marketing budgets and how are they doing it? What are they doing, right? So lots of different ways to get this good information. But I want you to think about how much you're going to put and apply to a budget. And I always tell people, you have what's comfortable, you have what's a stretch budget, and then you have to learn to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. But then if you are willing and wanting and able to scale, you have to then understand the numbers and metrics and how you're going to scale and what you're going to reinvest back into your marketing budget and what is working and what's not. And every year we do a marketing audit. We look at what to stop, start, keep, or tweak doing and why. And then we're going to calculate based on the findings of information that we glean from. So really the first step of figuring out your marketing budget is to establish what your total revenue is going to be, or what you want it to be. And then you're, in some cases, needing to talk to your CFO or your leader who's managing the numbers, right? Financial department, accountant, whoever it is that you're working with to help you calculate numbers. And when I work with our clients, I generally will work with the CFO or bookkeeper if they don't have a CFO, whatever the case might be, because I am searching for clues that are going to trigger how much we're going to be spending on their upcoming marketing budget and what we're going to put into their budget. So thinking about your gross revenue that's received before any deductions, allowances, or, rent, cost of goods sold, that kind of thing. Thinking about, okay, now what's your estimated revenue going to be, amount of earnings projected for a given accounting period of time. And then this calculation can really be important for a number of your financial activities that you're going to be doing aside from just marketing, right? You're going to needing to estimate your taxes and budgeting for all the other things, all of the interested parties of people who want money from you. But we're going to carve out the marketing budget, and we can do some different scenarios. We can look at options, option A, B, or C. Here's what's comfortable, here's stretch, here's the uncomfortable. We're going to look at things like your company size. We're going to look at how many people are employed in your marketing department, how many salaries, or even if you don't have a marketing department, how much time is being spent by your leadership, your owners, whatever the case might be. And we're going to put time value to money. and based on what your salary is and what kinds of things and activities you're going to be spending money on or that you have spent money on. And we're going to look at the budget allocation, looking at all of those different costs. And now startup costs can be anomalies, right? Those are going to be some of your one-time costs that are not going to be reoccurring. They're just going to be your initial injection that you're going to look at. And you're going to think about, okay, how much are we going to spend to initially get the business up and running and get all of the initial things going versus what's going to be a reoccurring cost? What's going to be an ongoing cost in your company? And to then continuously acquire those new customers, right? So there's lots of different variables here. And then we're thinking about the industry that you're in and what type of product or service or type of customer that you're going after, right? And how you're going to reach them. So marketing, thinking about established companies, here's just kind of a really general rule of thumb, but again, it really does depend on the industry, but anywhere between 6 to 12% of your gross revenue should be allocated to marketing for established companies. Now, again, startups, you're going to want to put more and invest more to get things established, right? So that you can become an established company. So really, you're thinking about, okay, if we are going to spend a percentage of our estimated gross revenue or proven gross revenue, right, year over year, what does that look like? And how much then can you back into it from a holistic standpoint? And what does that incorporate? Now, some people choose to incorporate salaries, some people do not. And so there's discussion on how we want to multiply and qualify and quantify all of the numbers and figures that are going into the spreadsheet that we will put together if we work on this together. So sometimes it can just be super easy just to say we're going to spend 10% of our gross revenue. And that is an easy way to determine it, a quick and down and dirty, easy way to say this is what we're going to do, how much we're going to spend. Now, performance issues or benefits, it could be that if we hit a certain target in revenue throughout the year, then we're going to increase the amount that we're going to spend on marketing because now we have more revenue to spend, right? So really it's kind of having some flexibility and reevaluating it either on a monthly or quarterly basis or biannually basis. And then you're going to look at that and say, okay, we've met this particular revenue goal that we set. Now we're going to, instead of spending 10% on marketing overall, we're going to now spend 12% or 15%. Or we know we have a one-time another, anomaly that we want to spend extra money on because of whatever reason. Maybe we need some new trade show setup or banners or, booth setup, right? And that might just be a one-time thing. Or we need to do a vehicle wrap that we haven't done before. And it's just going to be a one-time thing because vehicle wraps last a long time. The choice is yours. But what we want to do is establish how we categorize everything. And if it's a one-time versus ongoing versus if you want to incorporate it all, because maybe there'll be one-time things that you're going to want to do and prioritize in year 2 or year 3, right? And so thinking about all of those components that go into creating your marketing budget and whether it's a percentage of your overall gross revenue or not. Maybe it's a percentage of your profitability on bottom line. Although sometimes companies are not profitable in the first couple of years, so really that would kind of not work out so well, right? So think about continuously reevaluating it, auditing your marketing. I promise marketing audits that we do at Peppershock are not scary like IRS audits or anything, but looking at the different ways that you can go about tracking and collaborating and, making sure that you're comparing apples to apples year over year and not adding in or taking out the expenses that we identified as variable or ongoing, right? So continuously understanding if you're doing well. And the reason we want to look at customer acquisition cost and lifetime value of the customers is ideally over time, because we're going to get so super good at all of the iterations and understanding how best to market your company. The idea is that your customer acquisition cost will go down while increasing the lifetime value of your customers goes up because we have hit the jackpot on the right customers that we are attracting to your company, right? So think of this as a holistic point of view, how can you slice and dice that overall budget that you're wanting to spend? And, sometimes we do need to make those injections and spend more to make more, right? And so I always say marketing is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It is a long game. You have a plan to make over a longer period of time, right? You're a marathon runner, not a sprinter in this case. So thinking through the process, we work with our clients. Sometimes we do 6 months, a year, 2 years. We have a 5-year contract with some of our clients, and we do things over a period of time based on budget, performance revenue, and all of the things that impact how we would budget what we are budgeting. So let's see. I think the best way that we could go about this and how I could help any of you listening that would like to have a budget review, get a hold of us, and you can schedule 15 minutes of time for free with me. Go to peppershock.com/book-Rhea, R-H-E-A. Make sure you spell my name correctly. And you can schedule 15 minutes with me. We can have a conversation, see if it is something that you would like some consulting on. We can certainly look at that and understand and create a scorecard if we need to, if you don't already have one. But budgeting is definitely the trickiest part of the overall marketing campaign and media planning and advertising and thinking about what you're going to do in order to create the ads and how much you're going to budget towards that. Creating ads can really, really range. People ask me all the time, well, how much is it to make a 30-second commercial? Or how much is it to make a banner ad? Honestly, there's so much that goes into the variable costs of what is going to happen. For example, you could pay $20,000 to a voiceover talent if you wanted somebody recognizable and super special and you or more, right? Depending on who it is that you want to get. Or you could pay $20 to your nephew. I mean, like seriously, there's so many variables that can go into the production value of your commercials. But if you take the time and you produce it and it's going to be all of the things that we talked about in a couple of episodes ago, there's lots of variable factors that can definitely impact the budget in a positive or negative way. So you have to really consider all of those things and making sure that what we're doing is going to be highly effective, right? And that's why primary and secondary research and all of the things we talked about are super, super vital in making sure that you're going to get that ROMI, the return on marketing investments. All right, let's get into the interview. And next time we will wrap up this series and kind of share some insights and some other thoughts in the marketing essentials moments, the basics that you need to help you continue to build your brand and your bottom line. Now, let's get into that interview and go. Welcome to the Marketing Expedition podcast. I'm your host, Rhea Allen. I'm the president and CEO of Peppershock Media and the founder of the Marketing Expedition community. And today's guest, we have Jason Kramer with Cultivize. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks, Ray.
And you're coming all the way from New York.
I am indeed. That is true. A longtime New Yorker, born and raised.
Awesome. Well, let's hear a little bit more about your journey, how you got to where you are now and doing what you do with Cultivize.
Sure. So the abridged version, because I know we want to kind of get into the juicy stuff, right? That's
Yeah.
what everybody wants, right? They don't want to hear, where I went to, middle school. Right? So my background is I was always into art, always kind of DIY, kind of building things as a kid. And I went to Syracuse University to be a graphic designer, worked for agencies coming out of school. And then I realized, early on in the early 2000s, after being out of school just for a few years, that there was this need for people that were a business that didn't want to juggle a bunch of freelancers. And we're talking a period of time, Ray, when there was no Upwork, there was no Fiverr.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had friends of friends who knew a graphic designer or a video person or a web designer.
I got
And then,
somebody. I
right,
got
or
a guy.
and then you had agencies, right, which some companies couldn't afford, those large retainers. And so I built what was, I think pioneering was a virtual agency, right? So it was all the people I knew from my agency days who worked for me on a kind of consultative basis, part-time.
Mm-hmm.
And for 16 years, I helped hundreds, if not thousands, of service-based businesses, mostly in the tri-state New York area, New Jersey, Connecticut, et cetera, build websites, branding, a lot of collateral material. And to the tail end of that, after doing that for 16 years, we started getting a lot involved with email marketing. And so that led to the world of CRM. And what I realized, and after also looking for a change rate of kind of just
Mm-hmm.
doing something for so long, I was like, all right, let's change it up. I sold that first business, the agency, and Cultivize was born out of the need, which I think is really important, to help organizations track where leads are coming from, but more importantly, what happens after the lead walks in the door, right? And that's the virtual door for many businesses. But
Mm-hmm.
um, and so that's what my path was, and having that marketing background and a technology background, as being also so I wouldn't call a serial entrepreneur, but a two-time business owner. I'm approaching the world of CRM and technology from a very different perspective than most of our competitors that don't have that background.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because once you niche down in a specific area, then you become known for what you can do, right? I mean, do you have maybe some case studies or some examples of some things that you've done for your clients specifically that would give some ideas or inspiration to others?
Yeah. So, I mean, the common thing, so we work, I'll just say this to back up for a minute. We are not a software company, right? So we're more of a consulting firm where we're helping companies either assess the current technology they have, whether it be like an ERP system like a Salesforce or a NetSuite, even into basic things. They're using MailChimp for email marketing, right? And help them understand what technology is going to help meet and exceed those business goals they have, and also challenges, right? There oftentimes when you use a lot of technology, there's a disconnection between those tech stacks because you have to manually export things and re-import things. Things are not accurate; they're not done, timely, and so it becomes very chaotic, when you have that. And so, to answer your question, one of the most common challenges we find that we face with our clients that we can help solve is the follow up process. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is a lot of companies we work with are sending out, dozens of quotes or proposals in any given day, any given week. Sometimes over the course of a year, it can be thousands, right, of quotes and proposals. And if you have a sales team, even if it's a few people, to follow up with all that manually is nearly impossible. We know that, right? We're both in sales, right? And so, you know, what happens? You get busy, right? It's a busy week. You forget about things and you lose track of it. And so what we do is we create automated processes. We still keep everything very personal, very human, but it's automation to remind the salesperson to follow up. It might be emails that are automated that come from the salesperson. They'll look like the salesperson wrote it, but it's actually coming directly from the system. And so now the CRM becomes an extra, two or three salespeople. So instead of spending, another $90,000 a year and hiring more people to help with all this follow up, you can get something at a fraction of the cost, which would be software, to do that job for you. And
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about mundane tasks, right? So it's tasks that a lot of times salespeople sort of leave at the end of the day to do at the end of the week, and they're like, I'll get to it," and it just never gets to being done ultimately, and so it causes a lot of friction and pain points and cracks, in their sales process.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of wondering if you were to work with a brand new client and they, come to you and say, "Hey, I want to go through this process with you." What are some of the steps that you would initially want to take?
So it's one of those things that is a so I call it the shiny object syndrome, right? So,
Mhm.
and what I mean by that is software is rampant right now when it comes to business software and even personal on the personal side. There's so
Mhm.
much software out there. And so what happens often is that you look at something, you see a demo, your friend tells you about something, hey, you got to check this out. And I'm a tech guy, right? So I kind of geek out on these things myself.
Mhm.
But you have to be careful because it could be a very big distraction and a waste of time to dive into something without really knowing if it's actually going to help or your specific business and your needs. So what we do here at Cultivize, we have something called the CRM Fit Assessment. And
Mm.
what that is, it's typically about an hour-long conversation where we
Mhm.
take people through what we define as the top like 30 to 40 critical questions that are needed to figure out what type of technology is going to be best served for that team and for the company. But some of the kind of things I'll take out of that range for the audience that hasn't seen that yet would be who on the team is going to be using this piece of technology. And we'll focus on CRM for the conversation today. So
Mhm.
who's going to use it? What are they going to be doing with it is an important question. The other thing to think about is scalability. So a lot of times companies will buy software for pain points they have today, but they don't think about in the future what those future pain points might be. So then they outgrow that platform sometimes very quickly. And Ray, you and I both know that moving from one CRM could be a real pain in the butt. It can also be very expensive. Sometimes data is lost. So not to say it's not possible. It's something you want to try to avoid if possible. But if you have to, you want to work with a team that knows how to do that in a very diligent way. That's not going to also break the bank. And then the last thing I would think about too, when they're looking, Ray, is support. Um, Technology is technology, and even if you're a tech person, there are things that my 15-year-old son shows me, and I'm like, I don't understand. Can you show Can you show me
Mhm.
that again, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's not because I'm not good with technology; it's because it's evolving so quickly, and so I think a lot of companies jump in to software and they don't ask the questions. What kind of support do you offer? Can I get on a phone call with someone? Can I get on a Zoom call with someone? What's your average response time? Is the support going to include any type of strategy support, or is it all going to be technical support, which are two completely different things, right? If you have a CRM and you're doing a trade show or a webinar and you want to understand how to leverage the CRM for that event, tech support is not going to be able to help you. You need a
Mm.
strategic support, right, to help you kind of innovate. These are the email campaigns you can create. These are the things you can do with all different other aspects of the CRM. So
Mm.
those are some of the things. Of course, I could go on for hours and hours, but I don't know. We don't we don't have that time, Ray. So I'll kind of leave it
Oh,
at
yeah,
that.
I know, I get that. I mean, we could geek out all day about this,
Of
I'm sure.
course.
So, okay, Jason, I'm wondering, when because the biggest thing that I think with CRM and email, I mean, people oftentimes you see a headline, email is dead, right? But really, it's not. It's just it has to be used properly. What are some maybe ideas that you can give our listeners of maybe what to do and what not to do when it comes to their email marketing and just thinking about just high level some of the things that you've seen that have really worked and maybe some things that have not worked.
I absolutely love this topic, right? And so the reason I love it is because it's so easy to put an email together and to send it out, either manually or through a system, right? I mean, and now you have AI that can write content, which I would argue some of it's not great content and it may not be a fit for your voice and your
Mhm.
brand. But there's all these tools that are available. And so I think what companies should be doing, let's not talk about maybe the mistakes they're making, but these are the things that I know that work well. So first off, any type of email you're sending, you have to look at the results. And it's not just open rates and click rates. It's what are people doing when they get the email? Are they booking the demo? Are they downloading what you want them to download? Are they
Mhm.
going and spending time on your website? If you don't have a system that's tracking all of that, then I would almost make the argument to say, what's the point of doing the email at all? It's like having a billboard right up in Times
Mhm.
Square, but all the lights that are lighting up your billboard are all broken at night, so no one can even read your billboard. It
Mhm.
doesn't serve much purpose. And so I know it's a strong statement to make, but I would say that's something that I strongly believe in. I think the other thing that people don't do is they set things and they forget it. So it's we talked a little bit about maybe the concept of lead nurturing, which is really pretty much just being able to nurture and educate people and to typically send emails, but it could be other events such as, reminders to make phone calls, connecting on, social media. But a lot of people put together these nurtured or drip campaigns. And it says, okay, every 2 weeks, send this email, every month, send this email for 8 months, 9 months, whatever it is, but they don't go back and evaluate. They don't go
Mm.
back and say, did it have an impact on our sales? Did it have an impact on, the engagement goals we were looking for? And sometimes they have it set and running for years without even checking, which is shocking to me. Um, so if you have any type of, campaign like that set up and you
Mhm.
haven't checked it in the last 30 days, I would definitely check it. I think the other last missed opportunity is too quickly is personalization. I think a lot of companies are sending out emails that are very generic and they're not to the specific problems or to the industry or to the person's needs. And it feels that way on the recipient side. It feels very flat. I'm sure, Ray, you've gotten emails like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
so 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 the other piece of it is there are a lot of systems out there that are not expensive, and we work with a lot of these where you can personalize and customize that content of the email. It's not just changing a name and changing the company name. We can change headlines, we can change subject messages, we can change photos and graphics all dynamically based on information about that record in your CRM. So if you send out an email to 5,000 people, in theory, all 5,000 people can get a different version of that email with very little effort. So, having and to use those capabilities, I think is really important when it makes sense. The last thing that I love, which we've been testing this year, which we've gotten really good results on. So companies will send out a newsletter, for example, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they might say, "Oh, we got a 60% open rate," which actually I would think is really kind of industry aside high. But let's say even if you had a 60% open rate, 40% of the people on your list still didn't open up the email, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what we found that to work really well is most companies, and I think you probably would agree, are sending out what I would call some type of visual based email. It's got graphics, it looks nice, it looks pretty. Um, in your CRM, you should be fairly easily able to build a list to say, show me everybody that was sent our October newsletter that did not open the October newsletter.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then what we do is we create another version of our newsletter that is typically about 40 to 50% shorter, maybe sometimes even more in terms of content. We remove every graphic that's in there and we make it look like it's an email sent from Outlook. And it's an email that would come across as if I, Jason, was sending it to you, Ray. Like, hey, I was thinking about you. I thought you might find this interesting. And we have found a huge increase in engagement on that second send compared to if we would just resend the exact same email, that we did the first time to the non-openers.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure I don't need to throw a bunch of statistics and percentages at you for you to know that most of us spend too much time staring at screens. Being able to consume your content on the go means that your clients and customers can listen and learn from you without being tied to their desks. With Hello Audio, your customers can put their phones down, power off their PCs, close their MacBooks, and get the information they need from you while they're, let's say, walking a dog, doing a jigsaw puzzle, washing the dishes, maybe when they're in the car or exercising on the treadmill, sunbathing in their garden. Well, Hello Audio makes it incredibly easy for you. No more hours spent trying to figure out tech settings or trying to make a square peg fit into a round hole. You can click publish on an audio feed in a matter of minutes and have control over who accesses what. So visit peppershock.com/offers and sign up for a free trial of Hello Audio. So I think there's so much power in all of the data that you have at your fingertips if you just use it. I think that's the thing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, but it's knowing how to use it. I mean, it could be
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's so much information available. So yes, it's how to use the information is what I would say would be the priority.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that when we think email strategy and CRM strategy and all the tools, I mean, it's just there's so many different tools out there that people can utilize to make their systems and processes better. Is there like some favorite tools that you like to engage with the most?
Oh, that's another good question. um, so, well, we talk about email, right? So, in order to send an email, you need an email address.
Mhm.
Now, some people might be connecting with people on LinkedIn or other ways. So, sometimes email addresses, especially now with all the people, sending out spam, it's harder to find email addresses on a website. There's a tool I've been using for years, which I still love, called Email Hunter. Do you know that one?
Ooh, no. Tell me
So
more.
Email Hunter is a Chrome extension. So you have to use Chrome. Sorry, people using Explorer or Firefox.
Right.
It
Is
might be
Firefox
available there
still a
too,
thing? Are
but
they still around? I don't know. I've
I
been
don't
using
know.
Firefox for a while.
Funny enough, I had a client a few weeks ago saying, I'm having an issue logging in. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I'm like, what browser are you using? And they're like, Internet Explorer. I'm like, well, that's the
Oh,
problem. I'm
oh
like,
dear.
you need to get onto Chrome. Internet
Yeah.
Explorer hasn't been supported in a long time.
Yep. You're
Um,
right. Hmm.
so what it does is it tells you, so you go to the person's website, the company website, you click on the icon and, in your Chrome extension, and it'll tell you all the known email addresses it can find for the people that work at that company. And it'll tell you the probability of how accurate that email address is. And a worst case scenario, it would look through all the data it can find. It would tell you the format. So it might say the most common email address format we found is first name, last initial at.
Hmm.
And then if you know the person, then you could easily find out the email address. And that's a great tool. And there's a free version which you can get a lot of value out of. And then the upcharge is nominal, to sign up for their service.
Hmm. So, okay, that's kind of fun to understand some more tools too, because this is also something we could talk about all day, right?
Of course.
So that's a new one for me. What are some other kind of popular, or I guess not necessarily, I don't like the word popular, that's the wrong word, um attractive tools that could be used for people to gain more knowledge, and especially with all these AI tools that are there, right? I mean, there's so much, but I'm just curious, like, are there other ones that you like to use or recommend when working with your clients?
Well, I mean, so for me, like personally, I use a lot of tools to help with prospecting and keeping things organized, and data comes into a play in that. You talked about AI. There's tons of AI tools that can record Zoom calls and team meeting calls and all these things. I will tell you, I use a product called Read, and I'm not making any money off of it. I have
Oh,
no
sure.
no affiliation. I just like the tool, like the product.
Yeah.
But it's read.ai, READ. And what I really love about it is that it summarizes the conversation. It takes really good notes. It sends a summary and next steps to me and to the client. So it says, Jason's going to be responsible for this. Ray's going to be responsible for this.
Mhm.
Um, it's pretty amazing how accurate it is when it does that. And then what I also like about it, and I know I'm talking a little slow today because I try to be mindful of that on these calls, is that I tend to talk a little fast when I'm in just like kind of client meetings. And so it
Mhm.
tells me how fast I'm talking. It
Mhm.
also tells me sort of the emotion level. Do I have high
Oh,
energy? Do I have low energy?
like the
Um,
sentiment score, kind of like,
Sentiment score. Yep.
yeah,
Um, and
interesting.
so and then the other thing I like about it, lastly, is that every week I'll go through and it has a list of action items. So it says,
Mhm.
okay, out of the 10 calls, 20 calls you're on this week, here's the things that you said you were going to do. And this way I can go through that as like a punch list to make sure I
Mm.
didn't miss anything as like a next step action, for that either client or for that prospect.
Hmm. That's really, I like that. What
So
was the name of that?
it's
What was
like
it
having
called?
a really, 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 really good detail oriented assistant.
Yeah. And what was that one called again? Did you say?
It's called Read
Read.
dot AI.
Read, like READ dot AI.
READ, yes.
Got it. Okay. That's fun. I'm gonna have to check that out. You're giving me all kinds of tools to to investigate here. Awesome.
If you want, I'll give you one more that
Yeah.
I was playing with. For
Let's
those
hear
that
it.
are spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, there's a
Yeah.
platform called Surf, SUR. I believe it's F as in Frank, E as in Edward, Surf.
Hmm. Okay.
And what it does is if you're on LinkedIn, it allows you to click a button and then automatically take all the information, including email address in most cases,
Hmm.
and put it directly into your CRM from LinkedIn.
Hmm. That's
So that's a pretty cool tool
perf.
as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
That seems fun too. I
And if you
mean,
don't have a
yeah.
CRM, you can
Yeah.
also just automatically put it into like a Google Sheet. So you can
Hmm.
build like a spreadsheet of all the people you're trying to prospect.
Oh,
So you don't necessarily even need the CRM if you didn't have one.
okay. Yeah. I mean, I we're surprised about how many people don't have CRMs or any way of capturing their data, you know? It's like, how
It's
are you going
kind
to
of
market to
shocking.
people? Yeah, it's shocking. Um, and there's lots of different ways to go about it, even free tools that people can use. And I know like HubSpot does a free one, and I think Zoho are some that I've heard of. I don't know. Have you heard of other ones that, if the very least, if
There's
no one
freemium. The one thing I'll say about freemium is that
knows.
you don't want to get too far into the weeds, especially on a platform like HubSpot's like a great platform. There's no doubt about it. But
Mm-hmm.
unless you have the budget to spend probably close to $1,000 or $2,000 a month, I probably wouldn't suggest a free version only because the free version gives you access to just a handful of tools. And
Mm-hmm.
there's like 80 tools that make HubSpot HubSpot. And you
Mm,
don't have access to the majority of them with the free version. And so
right.
what sometimes we have conversations with people, oh, I've been using the free version for a few months. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm like, okay, yeah, we can help you do that. You just have to upgrade the account. It's going to be like $850 a month. They're like, what? And so now you're going from like 0 to 850 when you don't have the budget for it. And now you're like, okay, now I have to move to another system that I can afford.
Mm,
So I would just say my advice would be if you're going to do a free version or if it's a free trial, look at what the actual cost is once that free trial ends or you need to upgrade and make sure you can afford it
mm-hmm.
before kind of spending all that time falling in love or putting all your data into a system that you may not be able to really leverage as you want to grow.
Ah, that's a good idea. You're right. Because then I like the term that you used, freemium. Right. They're going to start charging you at some point, you know?
Eventually, yes.
Premium, freemium. Yeah, that's a good term there. Awesome. All right. So I mentioned before we started recording that I do have students that listen to this podcast as part of their curriculum. They get to listen into industry professionals, and I think it's a good way for them to be inspired by those who have had a career in something that they may be interested in exploring. So if you had a bunch of college juniors and seniors in front of you right now, what would you say to them if they were interested in learning more about getting into this industry, kind of things that you went to? I noticed I mentioned, or you mentioned that you had gone to college too. And this is a different generation now. Let me tell you, these young minds are, very different than maybe what we were used to when we were going to college, Jason. But what would you say to them? I mean, how would you encourage them to learn more, do more, and maybe incorporate them into thinking about in the next year, 2 years, they're going to be our next generation, our next workforce that's happening in our world. What would you tell them?
So I can tell you from my experience. So when I got out of school and I worked for different agencies, there were some agencies I worked for that were large, like global agencies that I was put into basically like a room and
Mm-hmm.
given a job, and that's the only job I was allowed to do. And I was the type of person that like, well, what's the accounting side doing? What's production doing? Like, I'd love to be involved in that. And they're like, nope, you stay here at the desk, you do this, and
Mm-hmm.
it was very difficult to really learn the whole process in being in an environment like that. So my one advice would be, try to get into organizations regardless of what you're doing, but even if it's this type of industry where you're going to have access to see how the different teams work and how they work with each other and how they
Mm-hmm.
complement each other. I think that's really important. I think the other thing to think about too, and you're right. I mean, I see how like, my teenagers are, studying and all these things, and they're using technology and I always joke with my wife. I'm like, I think I probably would have been a better student had I had all these resources that they
Mm-hmm.
have. All we had back then, Ray, was textbooks, right? So, and the notes we took, which were usually sloppy and not legible. But the point is that I would think about the problems that exist, So as you're getting into graduating from school, there's amazingly how many different, incubators and all these different programs that are out there for these young minds to really just sort of blossom into and to kind of grow these ideas that they're thinking of. Because they're also thinking about things from a different perspective. So, I would just say, there's nothing out there that's not possible. And I think when you're young, it's also worth, if you're able to be experimental, the reason
Mm-hmm.
I started my company so young is I was living in Brooklyn with two guys. Rent was cheap. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. Like overhead was low. And I was like, okay, well, if it doesn't work, I go back and get a full-time job. That was my thought
Mm.
process.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I was determined to make it work, but there wasn't a lot on the line. And so I think just being, out of school for longer than I'd like to admit, um, I've seen people that I went to school with that were stuck in the same job for 15, 20 years because they were scared to do something else, and then now
Mm.
they had the responsibility of the family, of the house, the mortgage payment. And so now's the time to kind of be sort of fearless, I think, um, especially if you have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's good advice. I hope they listen. Excellent. Okay, let's get into something that you listen to or that you read that has inspired you or gives you, you know, information that keeps you sort of on the leading edge, if you will. What are some things that you do with your, if you have spare time, right, Jason?
A hot commodity or rare commodity these days, but
Yeah, right.
most of my time really is kind of just the short 25-minute drive to the office.
Mm-hmm.
um, Sometimes at the gym, depending on what I'm doing there, but from audio, listening to things. But I will say that, Ray, I used to read a lot of books. I find that I don't have as much time to really kind of sit down and do that. And so,
Mm-hmm.
not to say I don't, but what I really love and find very helpful
Mm-hmm.
are podcasts. And I
Yeah.
know that might be kind
Yeah.
of funny to say because I'm here recording one with you, but um, they're easy to get access to. Um, they're easy to come back to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, you asked me kind of, I think earlier before we started, if I had any. I mean, there's a few. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a gentleman, I don't know if you know Donald Kelly from the Sales Evangelist, but
Mm-hmm.
he's one that I listen to a lot, and I've known him for years. And I'm not saying it because I was on his show to promote
Oh
him,
no, that's good
but
though. I would love other podcasters. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a
But the
cross
reason I
promote for
say,
sure.
that one specifically is because he's very sort of precise in his interviews. He finds people that, like we talked about today, have some type of advice, some type of resources they can share. And he talks to so many diverse types of people in the sales sort of community in all different aspects. And that's what I tend to like, and that's what I really focus on are those types of shows that have people where I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. Like even something simple. Several months ago, I was listening to one on the way to work, um, and I sort of have always done this mentally, but I've never done it like the way I'm going to describe it. But they were talking about allocating time in your day and sort of prioritizing things, and blocking out time for different things, which is something I really had never done aside from like meetings with clients or prospects. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so what did I do? I blocked out time to go on a quick walk. I blocked out time to follow up with clients. I blocked up time to, check on all our accounting stuff that I need to look on for the end of the month. I blocked out time for, various other aspects that weren't necessarily business development related, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and by doing that, I found that I actually had the time to get those things done. I wasn't being like, oh, like I've had 4 days back to back meetings. Now I'm behind because I wasn't able to get those things done. By blocking out time, I was able to get them done when they needed to get done.
Mm.
So that was
That's
just like something
cool.
so simple that it just sort of never really occurred to me to be like, oh, I should, do that. I mean, although it does kind of have the flip side because clients are like, how come you're never available at, this hour of the day? I'm
Right.
like, well, that's because I'm going for my little quick walk, right? Or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
might be. But that's okay, right? I mean, everybody is flexible and, I never really, I was sort of just joking there. But I find that that was a really good, helpful tip that, again, it was something I wasn't expecting to get that I'm like, oh, that sounds like could actually help. And, I gave it a shot.
Hmm. Gotcha. No, it's good. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, so I think we've kind of covered quite a bit, but is there anything else that you wanted to share that I didn't already ask you about that you just want to make sure that our audience knows that I haven't pushed you for yet?
Yeah, no, I would just say in summary, think of Cultivize as this visual. So an ad agency or your internal marketing team is getting somebody to knock on your front door of the company. Our job at Cultivize is to open that door, invite them in, sit them on the couch, get to know them, build a
Mhm.
relationship, and then to let the sales team know who's actually showing interest and who's not. Right. So we want to give the sales team the data and the resources and the insights to say you're more likely to close a deal with these people over here because they're absorbing the information, they're visiting the website, they're doing all these things, whereas these other people are probably like lower, top of funnel people that might take some more time to actually warm up to. And the other last thing I'll say is that we do all the work. I know this might sound complex, right, to some people, and not that it's not complex, but we do everything. We help companies, as I mentioned before, migrate to new systems. We help integrate to existing technology they have. We also can, take care of building all these email templates we talked about and sequences, cleaning
Mhm.
their data, training their team. We pretty much do it all. I'd say that you know, if I threw out a number and saying there's 50 hours to set up an account, even though it's less than that, we're doing 49 of those hours, right?
Mhm.
Like one
Mhm.
hour is the client just giving us feedback, maybe 2 hours of some
Mhm.
questions we have, but we're doing all the work. So when we
Yeah.
talked before about the hurdle to get into making sure your company has a CRM that's actually doing something and not just collecting dust, it
Right.
doesn't have to be an overwhelming sort of battle if
Mhm.
you have the right partner that can actually execute and build everything for you.
That's
And
great.
that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. I know I don't know what the statistic is, but I think a majority, it seems like, and maybe you can correct me since this is your world, it seems like a lot of people use MailChimp as the kind of this the sort of the staple of the industry. Is that kind of true, do you think?
I don't know the number on MailChimp. I can tell you that I know that Constant Contact has
Mm,
about 750,000 customers, give or take.
okay.
So I would say MailChimp, my estimation would definitely have more than that. So I'm going to say they have well over 1 million customers,
Hmm.
um, worldwide. That would be my guess. Yes, it's easy, it's cheap. But the thing of it is that it's it's all about quantity for them and not about quality. So you
Mm,
have to again realize is that email is getting harder and harder to use as a tool. It's still
mhm,
very cheap and effective in terms of like other types of medium, but when you're using different platforms, you have to just because you hit send, you don't really know if it's getting into the inbox, right? So,
mhm,
you know, you want to work with a company that's checking deliverability. It's making sure that the email's arriving and wants to make sure that the email looks the way you expect it to look and that it's not all sort
mhm,
of messed up when it gets into somebody's inbox or on their phone. But you also want to have like the website component, right? So a
mhm,
tool like MailChimp isn't connecting to your website to track who's coming back to your website, who's
mhm,
looking at content. And so if all you can get out of your email tool is just open rate and click rate, to me, that's very little
limited.
value, right?
Mhm,
There's not a
yeah,
whole lot you can do with that information. And so if
right.
you're going to put the effort into, you know, put together a newsletter, you should be doing it in a system that has a little bit more capability to help you get more insight and use that information in a more powerful way.
Yeah, it's like the whole ecosystem, email, website, social media, like all the whole digital ecosystem that you can use to build all of that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you for sharing all of your nuggets today with our audience. I think gave me a lot to think about too, as far as the tools and fun things to check out. But yeah, why don't you share? I think you have some resources that you wanted to drop today too.
Yeah, so I'm all over social media. There's lots of content out there. You could find me and find Cultivize. The easiest thing, Ray, for people to do is to go to afterthelead.com, just like it sounds, afterthelead.com. On there, there's three things you can do besides getting access to all the social channels that I mentioned. They could download our playbook, which is designed to show them how to actually nurture your leads. So it's step by step processes. It can work with most CRM systems, so it's not like it's platform specific.
Mhm.
That's a really good guide for those organizations or people listening that say, okay, we're really not nurturing leads today. How do we go about that? That playbook will tell you step by step how to do that. They can also sign up for our newsletter. We offer, as you could probably tell from the conversation today,
Yeah.
lots of really good nuggets of information regarding email marketing, email deliverability, CRM, sales process improvement, all those great things. And then lastly, I'm an open book in terms of just wanting to help people. So, Ray, any of your listeners that are not ready to necessarily move forward and say, hey, we want to work with Jason, but we have questions for Jason,
Mhm.
there's a link there to be able to schedule a call with me. I promise it's not a sales call. It's just, let's have a conversation. I'm happy to answer any questions that your listeners might have,
Sure.
so they can grab time with me when I'm not, walking, or any other time carved out on my calendar, right?
Right. Yeah, that's
But
great.
so yeah, so that would be the best place for them to go to after the lead.com.
And I can definitely tell the New York accent, right?
Yeah.
Because after the lead.com. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, thanks, Jason. I really appreciate you today giving us your time
Thank
and
you.
sharing
Yeah,
all of this
absolutely.
with you. And hopefully you get to have that walk and go listen to those podcasts, and you'll get to listen to ours too.
Yeah, although it's getting a little cool here in New York, so I got to kind of get those walks in before the winter comes. But
Right? Yeah, before
I love to
Snowmageddon. Hopefully,
walking
knock on wood, that
indoors.
doesn't happen this year.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is
Awesome.
terrific. Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, thank you. And for those of you listening right now, the best thing that you can do for Jason and I is share this with others that you know that need to hear what he had to say today. And give us a review, because all of those reviews are super helpful, and it helps with our rating to get ranked up higher and then shared more with others. So love that. Whenever you give us a review, screenshot it, send it to me, and I'll do a shout out. I do my monthly shout outs, news you can use, and events not to miss. So your name will be shout out when you give us those reviews as a thank you to you. And with that, everyone who's listening now, enjoy your marketing journey.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Expedition podcast. Want to continue the journey? Don't miss out on new episodes. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Wouldn't it be great if there was one place you can go to get all the latest information and tips about marketing and advertising? The Marketing Expedition community is that place. People like you gather in our online community to build relationships with others and find the latest marketing trends, tactics, tools, and technology. We help you build your brand and your bottom line. Start your adventure today. Visit themarketingexpedition.com to find out more.